I am Shawn McGrath. I made DYAD. It's a PS3 game that's coming out. It's hard to explain, but it's kind of a racing game, kind of not a racing game. It's kind of a shooter, like an old school shooter, but it happens inside of a tube with kind of weird mechanics that build on top of each other and make for an interesting thing. So regarding the multisensory stuff, one of the things that I thought was really important was establishing like a one-to-one relationship between game mechanics and things that are happening in the game, and making sure that they export, like the visuals and the audio that comes out of them has a very tight, strong correlation between exactly what's happening in the game without any sort of superfluous crap or any sort of like extra crap on top of it. So everything's a very tight, controlled one-to-one ratio, and one of the things that I thought was important is for everything to flow nicely, so the visuals really flow together, and it kind of creates an ever-changing like painting almost. And music, a friend of mine, David Kanega, did the music for it, and we spoke a lot about it and came up with these really interesting sort of interactive music ideas. So there's like sound effects or whatever in the game, but they're all musical. Like every time you play a level, it's almost like performing a song, and then performing like a visual light show as well. I mean, people are going to compare it to things that they already know and are already familiar with and sort of understand. So I feel fine about it. People can say, you know, you have to somehow base it in something that you're already familiar with, right? Those things are in some ways influential on me, but I don't care for them all that much. I was much more influenced by sort of more abstract things like Immanuel Kant's essay on the beautiful and the sublime, Stanley Kubrick stuff, David Lynch stuff, you know, Friedrich Nietzsche, some of his writing, and you know, I'm sort of more into film and books than I am into games. So I think there's like all the levels sort of reference something that I got a reference from. So if you actually Google any of the level titles, they'll come up with the thing that I was referencing, or one of the many things that I was referencing while creating it. So a lot of my influences aren't games, but they're from things, and I'm very open about what they are in the level titles and things like that. I mean, yeah, okay, so there's some Rez in there, and Rez was one of the more influential games on me, because it was the first time I'd ever seen anything, and I was like, yeah, that's something that's actually special. So definitely Rez, but as it plays, like the actual moment-to-moment interactions and the mechanics and things like that, the closest game, and I mean, this is going to seem really kind of out there, but the closest game that I can really think of is Tetris Attack, or Planet Puzzle League, or Pokemon Puzzle League, or whatever you want to call it, because Nintendo's remade it like 80 times. And in Tetris Attack, it's just a color swap, or a match 3 game where you have to swap two colors that are next to each other. But the way you build things up, and the way you're cashing in your rewards as you're planning for your next move, and building combos as you're cashing combos in, and there's a constant action that's happening and a constant flow of decisions and reaping your previous decisions, that I find the game very close to Tetris Attack in that way. You do have to think about things. It's not a racing game where you just have to follow an optimal line. The optimal line is really dependent on a million different things at all times, and you're sort of taking in a lot of information and deciding about how best to act. So in that regard, it's kind of like a puzzle game, but it happens so fast that it's kind of not a puzzle game. It's more like an experience almost, where you sort of have to feel what's going on and then like just intuitively make a choice and intuitively act. So in that way, it's not a puzzle game, and it's more like an action game, but it's kind of strategic in a way. We spent 4 months just figuring out a basic music interaction system. And so the first level took 4 months, and we were just like, oh, you know, if we can figure out a way to create metrics for what the player is doing, and that can sort of like crossfade different sounds, because like, as you play the game, there's between 30 and 60 sounds playing at all times, and then you can kind of, each one gets crossfaded and dynamically mixed based on what you're doing. So we worked, you know, really closely together on a whole bunch of different like ways of making that happen. And then as new levels were made, I would just show him the level, and he's not exactly he's not good at games, like he's not good at challenging, difficult games, and he finds this way too hard. I don't think it's hard at all, but he finds this like hard. So he would play a level with no music, and he just wouldn't understand it because his mind works in a very, you know, musical way or whatever. So he'd play it, not understand a thing about it, add music to it, and then he would then get an understanding of the game based on the music that he added to it, and then we would have a conversation about sort of, oh, I'm going for this, and he's like, oh, I'm trying to get this done or whatever, and then we would figure out a way to make it work together. It's a very sort of back and forth process for the music stuff in it. It's PSN exclusive for a while. It probably will be on PC, probably, later, but it's probably, other than that, it's going to be PSN.
Okay.
Or it might be Mac and Linux as well, but it'll be computers and a PlayStation. It'll be $15, most likely anyways, and it'll be spring, summer this year. You can follow me on Twitter at DYAD Game, DYADGAME, and DYADGame.com.